Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is the Guitar Conversation Podcast Season 1. Previously published episodes, which are available on iTunes, and I've decided to bring them over onto my YouTube channel and publish them as a Season 1. So stay tuned for Season 2, which will be coming out soon. And by all means, subscribe to the channel and give the episodes a like if you enjoy the content. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy.
We're getting some more. We've got one really good piece by a Chinese composer.
Yep.
We're going to get some more sort of hybrid Chinese influenced music.
Yeah. What do you mean by Chinese influence, like Chinese folk?
We've had this idea to try and because one of the conservatoriums in Beijing took us along to a concert, and they love the whole concert was their orchestra in like the equivalent of Hamer Hall, with backing up two soloists, always one Western instrument like a violin and then the Chinese instrument, and they're playing together but also being featured as soloists. And of course it's the Chinese instruments that are really interesting.
Yeah.
The music was pretty bland.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of examples of people trying to play that music on Western instruments, and it doesn't always work. But we're getting some composers to write pieces inspired by some of the techniques.
Sure.
And maybe figures, ornamentation, sort of variation style things where we put our own spin on it as a way of connecting more with Chinese audiences.
Fantastic. It's a massive market too, isn't it? There's a lot of people, a lot of guitarists.
For the uni, yeah, definitely. A lot of market, of everything.
And you also your students coming in
so
from
we're going over, that's the idea. So we're going over making contacts on behalf of the uni, but we're also playing music and premiering new works.
Yep.
And in a lot of cases they're what they hear is pretty conservative, so they're quite interested in what we're doing.
Yep.
Particularly with the guitar.
It just reminded me, because I think Barueco just released a CD with the Beijing guitar duo called China West, I think it is.
Yeah, because he sort of mentored them for a long time. They're very good.
So he's sort of got his finger
he's there a lot. He was, and what this Altamira guy Hansen does is he'll put on in his festival, he'll have an Altamira day where all people like Barueco and David Russell play his guitars.
Wow!
In concerts.
Is this Adrian Walter, or is this the Altamira guy?
This is him, Lucas Hansen. So he's the luthier who's sponsoring a lot of these activities.
Wow! So
they worship Barueco and Russell and those guys.
Those particularly those Americans. Actually, not that David Russell's American, but he's kind of there most of the time now, isn't he?
They're because they aspire to like the Western idea. They see this as something really important for China to get as much as they can from the West when it's classical music.
Yep.
And I've had a lot of really interesting discussions with teachers there about, they are very conscious of the whole Chinese students and Asian students are often seen as being mechanical and not very knowledgeable, very expressive. And I was constantly being asked things like, do you think the students here are musical? And usually what I was saying is, look, it seems to me like the same as I see everywhere. There are some really excellent students playing musically. Sure, there are some who are playing technically flawlessly, but they don't understand the music at all. But I see them here too.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a bit easy to fall into that trap of saying Asian students don't play with musicality.
Yeah.
What you can say sometimes is that they haven't really had a great base of listening or experience talking about music and things like that.
Which counts for a lot, actually.
Yeah, exactly. But they're keen to learn, super keen to learn. I also saw some kids who were super musical but had bad technique and couldn't get out what they wanted to say, So you see those students everywhere.
Sure. I know what you mean. So I suppose while we're on the Chinese thing, do they have conservatoriums? How does it work with them? Because, like, for example, in Italy, they do conservatorium from year 7. Or at least that's how it was up until recently, where they went into a conservatorium school where it's... And they do the 10 years.
And this is separate from their regular day school?
No, it's the same.
Yeah. No, they're definitely in Chengdu, in the west of China. We went there 2013, and that was like that. There was a huge. That's probably one of the biggest conservatoriums and has the best guitar program in China.
Right.
This guy, Professor Xu, awesome, and there's about 2,000 guitar students in this conservatorium, right?
Wow.
Maybe 20,000 kids altogether. And it's
Everything's
like a
huge scale. Isn't it?
pyramid structure. So you've got the young kids, and he is Professor Xu at the top, who also has a shop and imports and distributes guitars. He has his group of small group of students, and they teach the next level down, and it sort of feels
like martial arts school.
Yeah,
yeah,
basically. But not only that, he distributes CDs. Of course, he distributes these guitars. He's mates with the maker. So Hanson, the Altamira maker, is based in the south, Guangzhou,
right.
Which I don't know if it's Guangzhou or somewhere close to Hong Kong. And Professor Xu is in the west, and he has a young student, this boy Quan, I can't remember his name, but he's got an Naxos CD. He's only 15.
Nuts.
And he's just awesome. First day I was there, I did a masterclass for his students, right? And then after the masterclass, I said, we're going to have a student concert tonight. And I was like, oh man, I'm pretty tired. I hope this is going to be soon, Went to the concert, and it was this kid playing. It was just excellent. Standard, Granados, Barrios. And then when I saw the program, I was like, oh no. But when I heard him, I thought it was really good, really musical, beautiful playing. And then came as no surprise when he said to me, I've been taking him to Germany every year. He's had lessons with Butterworker, he's a Diodario recording artist.
Wow.
He's got an Naxos CD. So they've really focused on this kid.
Right. And
I thought he was complete package, so he was really good. I didn't hear anyone else like that over there. So this teacher, went to his... and then the next day after I'd done a few more masterclasses, he said, we have one more masterclass tonight. You come to my shop, we'll drink tea. And I was like, I'm really tired, Anyway, it turned out to be the boy. It was like they decided I could have a class with the boy.
Brilliant.
And all the other students were there drinking tea.
How did it go?
Tea. Yeah, good. He played the Antonio Jose Sonata, which is one of those competition pieces that gets wheeled out.
I think they did it in Adelaide, didn't they?
Maybe. Yeah, but it's...
They did, yeah.
It's a hard piece to play.
I know, it wasn't a required piece, but quite a few did it.
A few people played it. A lot of competitions it is a required piece, and I think...
It's not everyone's cup of tea, is it?
No, and I think you have to really think about... because it's so long, and, it's quite fragmented sometimes.
Little episodes.
Yeah, and some things relate, some things don't, some things are more important. You've got to actually really work out, or at least think about what you're doing. So it's quite easy for me to talk to him about that, because I think he was a bit lost. And it was probably fairly new for him. So that was cool.
What's your... just say he'd ripped out Sevilla flawlessly.
Yeah.
Musically.
Yeah, he was musical, very musical.
Where do you tend to go with that in terms of a masterclass situation?
Teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it's funny. Sometimes when you sit down to do masterclasses, I often think, what am I going to say?
That's right. But things come up.
You always find something. And, it might
always go a little bit deeper into something.
Yeah, or just suggestions. Often it's just, have you thought about this? Or this is an idea.
Because it is just pretty much a lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or you could go the John Williams approach, which is, let's open it up to everyone and have a big discussion.
Yeah, that's right, deflect the discussion.
Which is an interesting idea itself, because you have got a lot of people there, and you have to think about engagement too.
But then then it just becomes so broad. You think, what are they going to get out of it? I quite like it. I like those masterclass situations.
Have you done many?
I've been doing them. I've done a reasonable amount. I suppose we did some in Beijing and Hong Kong, a couple of different places in Hong Kong over the past couple of years. But I suppose also because I'm just teaching all the time here, either. And look, even here, I think it's a really good standard.
Yep.
Chamber music, guitar classes, individual lessons. Sitting around talking about music all the time. That's all I do. If I have a choice, I do something else. But when I'm put in that situation, that's like, okay, I'm used to it, and I actually do really enjoy trying to come up with things to say.
And in terms of like when you are discussing stuff, do you find that there are certain themes that you're often talking about?
Yeah, because sometimes I think, maybe I'm, talking too much about a particular thing. I should broaden it out a bit more. I mean, generally in masterclasses, I don't talk as much about someone's technique because, you feel like you don't really have the time and you're not going to may not see them again. So I like to focus on the music. I like to focus on phrasing. We both learnt from John Griffiths.
Yeah.
So we know his approach was like that.
Yeah.
Often it'll be things like you've got this complicated texture with bass, harmony and melody, but I'm not hearing the melody. You're not selling it to me. It's not singing. We need to take that part out. We need to dissect what is going on in the music. Where are the phrases? Too often guitarists are guided by their fingers rather than the music. Let's work on playing a melody. How are we going to play it? Legato, vibrato. What about rubato? Is that appropriate or not? What about the style? I like the way you played this piece, but actually I think it's the wrong way to approach this piece.
Because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about your PhD, which is on Spanish music.
Yes, representations of Spain and Spanish music.
And you've done like the De Falla CD, and you sort of work in that field.
Yep.
What is it that draws you to that?
Musicology. I've always liked it. So I was probably influenced a lot by John Griffiths and also Michael Christophridis. And in my honours year at university, I did, as well as doing performance, a research project on Manuel de Falla. And I looked at his... So he wrote the Homenaje for guitar, but he also wrote 3 other homages to different composers, not for guitar. And at the end, towards, I think in the 1930s, he orchestrated these into a piece.
Yes.
A 4-movement suite.
Right.
And so I looked in my honours thesis at the orchestrations and how he took the originals, like the guitar piece, and orchestrated them, and maybe what that tells us about the originals as well. So that gave me a taste of musicology. And then when I did my masters, focused a bit more on Spanish repertoire, Generation of 27 and other composers connected with Falla, and went to Spain, did some archival research, looked at a lot of correspondence and scores, things like that, and became interested in Ángel Barrios, who was a good friend of Falla's and a flamenco guitarist, and sort of like a real Spanish character and the flamenco guy who hung around with Albéniz and Falla and all of these people. So I looked at his letters with Falla and their relationship, and so then when the idea of the PhD came up,
seemed like a natural...
Yeah, sort of, I'd already been used to doing it, but also thinking of ways that it illuminated my practice as well.
And that connection with Spain, like when you did that research project, was that part of postgraduate, or was that part of your...
So the masters project, the Ángel Barrios, was part of my masters in performance. But,
did John Griffiths help you with that? Was he overseeing that, or was that something?
Pretty much Michael.
Michael, sorry. Yep.
And he was at the Falla Archive in Granada working and researching, and he invited me to go and stay with him.
Fantastic.
And so I had pretty much an in with all the people.
So how long were you there for?
So I went first at the very end of 1991 and stayed for a few months, and then over the next couple of years I probably spent 6 months total there.
Fantastic.
And then went back a few more times after that for shorter trips.
Yep. Were you doing anything else in Spain when you were there? Like guitar lessons or anything like that?
Yeah, I went to some festivals, so the Cordoba Festival, and I went to that a couple of times, had lessons with, or enrolled in a 2-week course with Leo Brouwer.
Yep.
There was a group of us, but we all got to play for him and discuss. The topic was meant to be arranging for the guitar. So I came in with arrangements, and I remember playing them for him, and he gave some really good feedback, but most people just wanted to play his pieces.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time we were just talking about his music, which was fine. That was really interesting. And then in Granada, they have some music weeks and masterclass sort of seasons. Elliot Fisk, I did one with him.
Yep.
David Russell and Joaquin Clerch, who was a student of Fisk's.
Yep.
Some lessons with him.
How did you find Elliot Fisk?
Yeah, interesting. Probably one of the best classes I had with him was on, because he would tend to just play. So he would talk a little bit and then he would just say, "Give me your guitar," and he would just play. So I remember once playing him, I think it was the Berio Sequenza, which was written for him.
Right. Yeah.
And then he ended up playing through like 6 Paganini Caprices on the guitar, which was great to see up close because it's quite amazing.
Yeah.
But I almost got more out of just watching him play.
Yeah.
Also working on the Gerard Fantasia for guitar with him, and I remember he said, "Oh, you can turn this bit, maybe a bit I was struggling with, into an exercise," and played in all keys. So I spent about half an hour watching him do that.
Wow, so he actually demonstrates every single thing.
Yeah, it took him a while, and I remember sitting there thinking, I'm not sure if I really want to do this, but it's interesting watching you do it.
Is he like just completely like obsessed with this sort of stuff? You know, it's almost from a combinational mathematical perspective, or is it
I don't know. I think it's just his teaching style is quite manic.
Yeah. And that's his playing
manic
as well, I suppose, to some degree.
Yeah, and I think I got the most out of watching him play than hearing him talk. But then the other good thing about Cordoba is I met quite a lot of people. I met a friend, Oscar, who ran a festival in Portugal, and I used to go there every year. And he had the Assad brothers and Barroeco and David Russell, all sorts of Roberto Alcel, a lot of these types of people at that festival. So I got to sort of hang around and be part of that. And Oscar and I played in a duo together, and we did a lot of concerts.
Great.
So I feel like just by hanging around and going to a lot of master classes, even not even necessarily playing, but
you get a lot from it. Yeah.
You pick up things that just stay with you for ages and ages.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I've had that experience overseas as well. I was just thinking, I remember you telling me that you shared a taxi with Barroeco once.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Who was that?
Well, that was in Portugal, I think, in Santo Tirso. And I think in that taxi ride, if I remember, he was asking me about John Williams.
That's right.
Yeah, because found out I was from Australia, and he said, "What's John Williams like?" And a real fan of John Williams, which in some ways is not surprising, I think, because Barroeco's got that real precision about his playing. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. It's funny, for example, John Williams used to own a house in Merricks.
Yeah, right.
Which is featured in that film Profile that was made around that time. And I've always been curious about where it is. And just dinner on Saturday night, I don't know how it came up, but one of the people at dinner is friends with the people that now own it. And she's there every week. Wow. And I was just like, where is it exactly? She's like, it's just there. And I was like, oh, cool. And I mean, it's no real consequence. But it's an interesting thing. It's these funny connections that come about from just being in the area. We both were in Adelaide. Was it the time before last, or was it when Barroeco was there?
Yeah. It was the festival before the last one, I think. And he did the double bill with Yamandu.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was an interesting concert. And, the funny thing is about being at festivals is that it's brilliant because, to a classical guitarist, these guys are not like gods, but like a sporting hero sort of thing.
Yeah.
But to anyone that's just slightly removed from guitar, even just a guitarist doesn't play, they're just completely no one. That's right. So in that sense, they're very approachable.
Yeah, it's good to be able to speak to them and see them around and how they prepare, what they do.
We should just jump over to Yamundi because through Doug you've spent some time with him. Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, he's a phenomenal musician. I think even in Brazilian music, there's so many great Brazilian guitar players and traditions, but I think he really stands out over there. And I mean, Doug's got a lot to say about this, but I think it's connected with the fact that he comes from the south. He brings a whole lot of southern Brazilian gaucho sort of traditions to his playing.
What do you mean by gaucho?
So sort of the sort of similar to some of the Argentinian folk styles.
Yep.
He sort of is very at home in that.
Yeah. So in that sense, he's being slightly on the periphery. He's able to sort of inject it with a
whole new
freshness.
whole sort of technique, a whole new approach. But he equally plays choro really well, samba. He loves the music of Nathalie, and he learnt so much by ear just from records and transcribing that he's able to pick things up really quickly.
Is he self-taught? Or?
I can't remember whether his father taught him a little bit as well.
And he reads, obviously.
Yeah, I think reading is not the most natural thing in the world for him.
Yep.
So if he does read something, it'll be just to memorise it.
Right, and it all goes in and...
Yeah, you would never see him, certainly not on stage, I don't think, with a score.
No, but his pieces are... They're complex.
Yeah.
He seems to just...
Pieces he writes, yeah.
It's all there.
It's also, often with his solo pieces, they sound fantastic and, you sort of work it out. And it's not that complicated, but it's partly the way he plays it. It's either the speed or the spirit. And for me, it's sort of the way you've hardly ever seen anyone play guitar and look like they're having so much fun.
Yeah.
Or be so in the
moment. That's what I think of when I think of Yamundu. He's able to...
Joy of playing.
And it just pulls people in like a vortex. Because
totally.
You totally get... And that's the sign of a brilliant performer, isn't it?
Yeah. And he improvises, he writes, he's got all these traditions at his fingertips. He's a real phenomenon.
Brilliant.
Totally.
I was going to ask you about Segovia and if you thought he was still relevant.
Well, Segovia's... yes, but I think he's a really important figure. When I was a student, say in the late 80s, and buying guitar magazines and from America and the UK and listening to recordings, there was definitely a reaction against Segovia's way of playing and against even maybe the repertoire that he played. And I guess it was sort of like a natural correction in some ways.
Yep.
Because he had, even in the sort of 20s and 30s when he came to prominence, so from the late 20s, his style of playing in some ways was quite old-fashioned even then, quite romantic compared to other instrumentalists, and he maintained that style all the way through. So when you hear Segovia play a piece by Ponce or Tedesco or something that's been written for him, you're hearing his personality come through very strongly, and sometimes it's hard to separate the performer from the composer, or So I probably, like a lot of people, thought, I much prefer hearing someone like Barueco at that time, who wanted to go back and play Granados and Albéniz with, correct rhythms and a more informed sense of rubato and shaping and whatever, and not use tricks on the guitar of colour and contrast so much.
Yeah.
In some ways trying to approach it a bit more like a piano. In any case, now I'm much more interested in Segovia, but it's almost because we see him with a different perspective as a really important figure. Not the only figure, others before and after him who are important, but very important for a lot of reasons. And also, when you choose to play a piece that he played, whether it's the Bach Chaconne and his arrangement or something like one of the Ponce sonatas, you might choose to do it in his style with his fingerings and his approach to sound, and I think that's really valid too.
He's established he did establish a unique perspective and approach that wasn't there before, even though his personality was quite strong and perhaps
I wouldn't say it wasn't there before. I feel like he never really gave enough credit to people like Miguel Llobet, Emilio Pujol. Of course, he took a lot from Tárrega. Those things were there. In some cases, many of the arrangements were there, and he just changed little bits and pieces and called them his own. But you can't argue that he marketed the classical guitar
He did
more
do that.
successfully than anyone else, and he worked so hard to get new music and to tour and record, and really took advantage of all the new possibilities of the
Yeah.
20th century: recording, touring, publishing.
He did put it on the map.
Totally.
He put guitar on the map, and
Yep.
it may not have ended up on the map.
Not in the same way.
I was just going to ask you about playing a little bit. Do you have a kind of daily drill that you do? Do you practice every day?
Well, I could either say what I'd like to be
Yeah,
doing
or you
or what
could
I
do
actually
both.
do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had times, of course, when I had daily drills and sort of a regular routine of practice to do, but I probably find a little bit more these days because I'm so busy and, you know, both at home and at work, that I tend to be practicing for gigs that are coming up. So there's always something to work on for a recording or a concert, and so I really try and focus my energy on that.
But as a stock standard, do you have something that you...
Yeah, I
Did you
used to
warm up?
like. I really like the Scott Tennant warm-up routines in Pumping Island. I like
Yep.
doing those.
Yep.
I like doing scales and warm-up routines. I probably done more as I've gotten older. I really like playing all the major and minor scales in every key, and I go around the cycle of fifths. So I'll play. I have a metronome on, and I play. Start with C. Say if I'm doing IM rest stroke, I'll play C major, harmonic, C melodic minor, do the arpeggios in the key of C. And the metronome's going, and I might play just one note per click, and then when I feel like it, I'll turn it into quavers or triplets. There's no urgency. And I'll go to F, I'll choose a different right hand combination like IA, and I'll play 3 octaves, major, minor scales, arpeggios, and then I'll go to B flat, maybe MA. And I find if I go around the whole cycle of fifths, if I'm going quickly, it takes about 10 minutes to do all the keys. But if I'm taking my time, it might take a little bit longer, 12, 13 minutes. But because you don't have to go around the cycle of fifths, but it's just a way of mixing it up and
Sure.
not constantly just
Same
moving up a
place.
little bit at a time. You sort of have to think about the key.
Yeah.
You have to be... It's a good focusing exercise as well as getting
Got a
your
musical
tone
thing.
and touch.
That's interesting because Slava has a similar drill.
Oh,
I
okay.
was talking to him about it, and because he's comes from a violin perspective, I suppose, from his dad, and he just chooses a key, and he'll do everything in that key,
Yeah.
and then move on.
Well, doing all 12 keys,
right.
but major and minor scales
Right.
and arpeggios. The order I do is major scale, harmonic minor, melodic minor scale, and major arpeggio, minor arpeggio,
Yeah.
dominant seventh, which
Yes.
then leads me to the next key around the cycle of
Oh,
fifths.
right, yeah, that's good. I like
Yeah.
that. And do you encourage that for your students to do that sort of thing? Is that part
Yeah.
of what you teach?
I think sometimes even just, I'm surprised how many good students don't really know scales in all the different keys. So I'll encourage them to try and play them. Find some sort of routine where they're working in different keys. They might do that exercise, but only choose 3
At a
keys
time.
per day or
Yeah.
2, whatever.
Yeah.
I think warm-up routines are good, but also some sort of what they call in Suzuki method tonalizations, where you just work on getting a sound on either open strings or very simple, closed strings, or just a limited number of notes working on tone. I think it's really important every day.
And how do you do that? It's just like find a note and just ring it out.
So 2 things I like to
Time.
concentrate on with students. One is getting a good sound and then matching rest stroke and free stroke. So here
You've got a guitar handy?
Yeah. This is one that the uni's we just bought this guitar actually.
Is this an Altamira? No.
That's Bernabé.
Oh, cool.
We bought it from Pierre. Is an instrument that we can lend to a first year student who comes
Great.
in who may not have a good instrument.
So it's a handmade?
More or less.
Yep. sort of in what sort of price range?
About 4.5,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So handmade cedar, traditional.
Yep, totally traditional. Just a good sort of Spanish sound. Still sounds quite good. It's strong. I reckon it's pretty good.
Excellent.
It's got quite a big neck. So.
Quite wide. Right sound.
Yeah. I like it. So, all right. So a couple of tonalisation style exercises. I don't know if my nails are any good. Even on an open string, being able to play a nice rest stroke, and then to play a free stroke, and really press into the string.
Yeah.
Let's get the angle as close to that one as possible.
Yep.
Now, good extension of that is choosing a note like an A, which is usually pretty resonant on the guitar, playing a rest stroke, say with ring, middle, index, and then free stroke.
Really focusing in on that quality of tone and consistency.
Yeah, trying to match it so you won't get exactly the same sound.
Nice.
Good little warm-up exercises. And then, of course, things working with simple arpeggios with prepared fingers.
Yep.
But also and this is something I learnt from Frank Longay, great Suzuki guitar teacher, to work on free stroke as chords first. So trying to get the depth of sound with 2 and 3 notes together, pressing into the string, really feeling the resistance of the string, and then to start to separate them.
That really helps you.
Some individual notes. Yeah,
because that gives you more of a prepared shape.
More of a prepared shape and the sort of feeling of pressing in and the
Brilliant.
resistance to the string.
Because you've done the Suzuki training,
Yeah.
and did you find it useful?
Yeah, I thought it was great. Did it back in the early 90s when it was still fairly new. Suzuki guitar was very new. Frank Longay came out to Australia quite a few years in a row.
And he was the exponent of it in Australia.
Well, he's the American guy who really adapted the method for guitar first and based it on Dr. Suzuki's teachings and the violin particularly, but he also used aspects of cello teaching because he felt that the left hand and the
kind of similar.
was similar to the cello. But he went into it very deeply, the Suzuki philosophy and
What is it? What is the Suzuki?
well, whatever I say, I'll be in trouble for simplifying it.
Yeah.
But one important aspect of it is the mother tongue method. So all kids learn their own language as they're growing up. They're surrounded by it. They're encouraged. They learn it in a way where they learn smaller elements first, and they progress to sentences and there's a stage of development where the brain is particularly responsive to this sort of language acquisition phase, which I can't remember exactly, but it must be between sort of 2 and 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
So the idea is to do the same with music, to provide the similar conditions and to break things down at that age, and to break things down into really manageable chunks, but to have a really well-structured and progressive method. Now, even though it's the aim is to do it at that age. It's still incredibly beneficial for older kids because it's so well structured, I think.
Sure.
Particularly the initial stages, initial books, with the right teacher. And what it does for guitar, one of the things, or a couple of things that really struck me, firstly, the guitarists were focused on playing melodies a lot, which is great. So learning how to play tunes.
Yep.
And how to play a melody expressively, big emphasis on playing musically. And a lot of, what you'll see in a lot of guitar methods and with a lot of teachers is really big jumps between pieces and between year levels. This is, there's a real process of learning something but then assimilating it through other pieces before and there are key target works that bring together all sorts of things that are learnt, but there are other pieces that are in there really to consolidate and not add anything new. So this idea of what it looks like is that it moves much more slowly than other methods, but it's not just that, it's that the teaching is focused on getting everything really spot on and right, and then building on that. So you're really building a strong foundation. So all those sort of ideas I was really attracted to. Common repertoire means that the kids can play together in groups from the word go almost, from when they can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So a lot of ensemble playing. And Frank was an inspiring teacher. And I found, even though I don't teach the method anymore, it's influenced me a lot.
Sure. Yeah. Are there any guitar teachers or guitar players that that went through Suzuki that have sort of...
Yeah. There are a few. Jacob Cordova, who lives overseas now. I remember him when he was very young. He was a Suzuki guitar student. I'm sure there are some others. Well, Tristan Cousins, I taught him. He did a master's here and he's living in Wales at the moment.
Was he through Susan?
He learnt with
well.
Peter Newnham first when he was very young in Suzuki teaching, and then he came to me. I taught him through maybe 4 years of primary school. And pretty much Suzuki method, and then he got a scholarship to go to Strathmore. And he learnt with Susan there, and then came here and he learnt with Tonya and did a master's, but started with Suzuki method.
Brilliant.
There's been a few kids like that, and a couple of my students, Rosie Fiumara and Alexandra Svoboda, have done the Suzuki training, and I think as they're sort of carving out career as teachers, that's been really useful for them. I still like to go back and go to the workshops, and often teach ensemble at their spring sort of festivals and things.
Because they do that quite regularly, don't they? Some advice, perhaps, to, hopefully the people listening to this are, mostly guitarists. So perhaps based on what you've come across as a teacher, what sort of advice would you give to aspiring young classical guitarists?
Firstly, I guess it's important to, if you really love it and you enjoy it, stick at it, and also seek advice from as many different people as you can. But don't be discouraged when some things don't go your way, like maybe you don't get into a competition, or maybe you have a bad day or a bad recital. That anything that's worth doing takes time, and something like music is, it's constantly challenging, but if you work at it, it's a really rewarding thing to do. Yeah,
I would agree with you there. And we've spoken about that idea of everyone has their own speed and timeline, and it's a lifelong thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And the society we live in is very geared towards success when you're young, but with this sort of art form, it's just very rare, and it's not necessarily the way it should go. Like opera, for example.
Yes, well, and guitar, I think, the guitar is well suited to people who want to forge their own path, because we tend to play a lot of new music. It's versatile, and guitarists tend to be versatile. Or, early music, improvising, jazz, world music styles, popular music, classical. The guitar sort of has it all, and there are many opportunities. And I think if you're proactive and you like to work with other people, then there's a lot of opportunities for guitarists.
Great, thanks Ken.
Yeah.
Thanks for being our first member on Guitar Conversations. And next time, I'd love to continue our conversation. We can talk a bit about your work at Melbourne Uni and that sort of thing, which
sounds good.
is just amazing that we get talking and time flies.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thanks Ken. We'll see you next time.
Sergio.